Welcome to Movie Bounce with Mike and Harry, where we'll bounce from movie to movie.
From actor, writer, director, any which way.
Who knows where we'll bounce to next? Hi, everybody. It's Mike here,
Harry's here again.
and it's another holiday episode. We keep going. We keep counting down the days till Christmas. And what movie are we talking about today, Harry?
I just love the energy that you're bringing to
Gotta
this.
keep going.
Yeah, just
Yeah, you know this energy is going to die out soon because as soon as we start talking about the movie. So I'm trying to ride this surfboard as long as I can.
well, we're talking about Return of the Jedi, so we are closing out the original Star Wars trilogy with this episode.
We're not stopping with this energy. Return of the Jedi.
I'm gonna get right into it and say that after how great Empire was, how much we love The New Hope, it is certainly not the best of the trilogy, and we're gonna really dig into that.
Well, we did dive a little bit into it when we discussed Empire by saying, how can you make a satisfying ending to such a trilogy? And we're going to dive in that a little bit later. But I will say I had a lot of fun when I watched it the first time I saw it, which was
It's
2 minutes.
definitely it's a fun movie, and it mirrors more A New Hope in a lot of ways, and I'm certain.
Do you
that's
think that's more
intentional.
course correcting?
I don't think it's course correcting. I think Lucas is a big fan of the classics, and I think he's a big fan of structure. And granted, he didn't direct this, and he actually, co-wrote the screenplay. But I would say that he definitely wanted to kind of bookend the movies, and there, anyone who's watched any of the Red Letter Media reviews of the prequels, there's a scene actually from the behind the scenes of the prequels where he references like the movies being like poetry where they rhyme, and this definitely rhymes with A New Hope.
When you talked about last time the feeling of being confined within Empire, I feel like all that confined, you're released as soon as this movie starts off. Really, things have been kind of resolved sooner rather than later within this film. You've got the basically the characters coming together rather earlier on within the film, where they've been so separated quite a bit within Empire. How
Yeah,
did you take that the first time you watched it?
they really clear the decks, and they, like you said, they kind of just get a lot of that stuff done and out of the way, so that the movie has more of a clear runway to get to the end.
Right.
As a kid, of course, you want to see Han Solo back as soon as possible, and you're relieved when he gets unfrozen and all of that stuff. So I can't fault them for that. And you don't want to spend more than half the movie trying to rescue Han Solo. So I get that. But I will say that it's a bit rushed. They everything that they did in Empire is kind of just somewhat, not everything, but a lot of it is undone. Like Lando Calrissian, bam, he's a good guy. He helped rescue Han Solo. Don't worry about that anymore. Han Solo's back. We're cool. Luke's back, and don't worry. We're all set. We're all gonna get together, and we're all gonna deal with the threat of the Emperor, and we're going to deal with Darth Vader because that's the main focus.
Do you think we needed another film in between?
No, I don't think so. And in fact, it's funny that you mentioned that because they did write that novel, and it was basically a movie without a movie. It was like Shadows of the Empire, where there was a novelization. They did a soundtrack and a video game and merchandise. The only thing that was missing was an actual movie, and that explained what was going on between Empire and Return of the Jedi. I don't think you need that, and I think we now tend to over-explain a lot of stuff in movies. So at least this movie, Return of the Jedi, didn't go to those lengths.
It didn't, but you still feel well, we got to catch up. Where have things been since? I mean, he might as well have had Han Solo show up without
Yeah, right.
carbonite.
There's just a scene where he taps Luke on the shoulder, thanks for saving me, kid.
Yeah.
That's
He was just like, weren't you in carbonite? Water under the bridge.
Hey, don't worry about it, kid.
Right. But at least we got that.
I appreciate that there's enough of a disconnect where it could have even been years between those movies. You have no idea, and
right.
that's fine. I like it. You definitely have a feeling though. The characters, obviously they age because it's 3 years since the last movie came out. They physically aged, but the style and even the way they act, like kind of hints at quite a bit of time has gone by.
Right, and I do like that. And a lot of the times that can be a little bit, I guess, off. Like when you feel like you've seen it when movies take more than 3 years. 3 years isn't that long in between films, but if it's 10 years, then you definitely feel like that time
Right.
has really not helped them stay together. It just kind of makes things feel off, for the fact that they have to overcompensate to capture that energy that they have established in the previous films. Whereas this, they didn't have to do that much. It's only 3 years. Whereas I do think, I don't know. It's weird to think after this film, if they did get together again, if these episode 7 wasn't in 2015, if it came out 5 years after this, if that, energy was still able to be sustained enough for those episodes. I'm not sure. But I do think that this could have. I still do feel something missing. I feel something lacking within the first few minutes. I mean, and this film also could have, like you said, it could have dragged out this whole Han Solo in carbonite kind of thing till the end of the movie, and then that would have been just where to go with that, and it's really holding on to that suspense. And luckily they didn't go down that path, whereas other films have done that, something similar to. You got to wait till the end of the whole movie that you're about to see to get the payoff. So I'm glad that they did kind of have this quick resolution at the beginning. You get the more the payoff up front.
Right.
I do find that I enjoy the opening more than I enjoy the finale of this film. Did
I
you feel
agree.
the same way?
Yeah, the opening is just so much more memorable for me. You've got
Right.
Jabba the Hutt. It kind of brings you back to Star Wars to some degree. So I mentioned in our last episode that Empire Strikes Back doesn't really give you all of the creatures and all of like the interesting visuals in that regard. This movie definitely doubles down on that. And I know people didn't necessarily like Jabba's palace, and they said there was just too many Muppets and all that stuff. And I don't necessarily see how it's that much different than the cantina scene in A New Hope, except that it runs a little longer. I think this movie kind of brings you back into basics. It pulls you out of the claustrophobia that was Empire and says, like, all right, well, we're going to reintroduce these characters into the galaxy.
But then the journey goes down a different path, and it's like, okay, you're reintroduced to you see Yoda again, and you've gone through. There's been that time there with that character, and I think that, as I mentioned within Empire, I didn't fully embrace Yoda on that one. When we got to this, and you see him again, and he's older, he's more, he's on his way out. Something happened. For some reason, that absence of that time, that distance, made me care more about the Yoda character, and especially when he was on his way out.
On his way out.
Yeah, he's on his way out. You know what I mean? And of course, Luke's a lot more wiser in this one.
Yeah, I
he's
don't
got
know.
his shit
I don't know
together.
about that.
I mean, he shows up acting like he owns the place.
Yeah, like I don't know how more wise Luke is. I feel like he's still pretty crappy. But
Pretty crappy.
At that point, I think Yoda's like, whatever. Like it's too late.
Yeah, Yoda's like, I'm on my way.
But yeah, I'm on my way out. According to Mike, I'm on my way out. But
I just want a T-shirt that just shows Yoda and it says, "quote I'm on my way."
But, right. But you know what?
Remember hold on, there was that DVD. It may have been a VHS copy of like they had the faces on the boxes, like
Yeah,
and
when
the
they
third one's Yoda.
Yeah, I
And I'm
remember
just
that
like,
one.
I'm
That's
on
like
my
the
way out.
shirt that like John C. Reilly wears in like Step Brothers.
Step Brothers, right?
You're totally bringing me back. So I had those VHS tapes. I was so excited when they came out. I think I got them for Christmas. But you may remember or may not, you could send away for a fourth video.
Oh, bonus?
A bonus, which was like behind the scenes stuff. Like you could get it through Corn Pops. You would
Wait,
send
what?
you would send the UPCs back, and you would get like this tape, and it was like, oh man, it was so cool because
Was it a monologue by Luke?
no, but like at that time, you have to remember, like that was before the prequels. That was when Star Wars was still like kind of hibernating. This was when it was starting to wake up again. Like this was before the special editions. This was before like it became cool again. It was really cool. It still felt kind of slightly underground because it was like 90, probably 95, 94, 95, and like no one was really talking about Star Wars.
No one was talking about Star Wars in '95.
Not to the extent that they were
They
from
had to have been
like 90.
selling.
Not
Wait, so
yet.
you're thinking? Are you saying that it wasn't until the special editions that were released that the energy for these
Yeah,
episodes
totally.
were revived?
Totally, because I remember getting into Star Wars like around this time, and it was still pretty like there wasn't nearly as much stuff out there as there is now, or even like starting with the special editions, like there wasn't a lot of content. You have to really actively seek it out.
So you're saying the re-release is what got a new generation hooked on this? I don't know. Maybe it's just, again, it could be just the fact that social media wasn't around during this time, and that's why you think that.
Now it's hard to gauge now because
Yeah.
there's always new content coming out, whether it's a movie or a TV show or this or a video game. But I'm gonna say in like '94, if you walked into a store, there was probably zero Star Wars merchandise in that store. Whereas a few years later, there was always just something Star Wars. Like they were always like keeping it warm. Like back then, it was pretty dormant. Like I will definitely go to the mat saying that. Like
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, I'm just basing off of how much these movies made at the box office. Like, the people were there. I mean, it kind of died out a little bit before
Yeah,
by
but then
Return of the Jedi.
they forgot and they just left it behind, and it wasn't necessarily like prevalent. It was almost nostalgia at that time, where now it's just part of culture. Period. Like it's always going to be there. Whereas Star Wars, it was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that, or that was cool. It was always in the past tense.
You're bringing it back for the theatrical experience, coupled with the prequels, just revived it, and then everything's been consistently building since then.
Yeah, definitely. I think the prequels were like when the special edition was kind of loading the canon up, and then the prequels were like actually like lighting the fuse.
Was it really the special effects not being there the reason why Lucas didn't get on top of the prequels earlier?
Yeah, probably, or I think that's largely true. I think he probably had a lot of big ideas that he just felt
But here's
like
the
he
thing.
couldn't execute.
Don't you feel like if he was less concerned about special effects and more just focused on story, we would have gotten better prequels?
Well, that is one of the biggest criticisms of the prequels. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
For some reason, I don't know. I feel like it's just a matter of if social media were around in the '90s, as you said, like during that time, you would have had a better gauge to see. Man, I don't know if these weren't popular. I don't know what was popular. Maybe Jurassic Park, but that would
Well,
kind of be it.
I think they just were out of the mainstream. Like, of course, they were fans. They were hardcore fans, and like you could go and buy like a novel about Han Solo. But again, like that was just for like Star Wars geeks or people who like sci-fi. Like now, it's just another thing out there. But trust me, like, because getting into Star Wars at that time, there wasn't a ton of stuff to like track down. I mean, I read like, I don't even remember. It might not have even been around that time, but there was like some Star Wars magazine that I would read, and again, it was like super niche, and it wasn't like the store had it all the time. So, yeah, I will definitely say it was a lot different back then.
And another comparison, though, and this might not be the best comparison, but I mentioned this Jurassic Park, right? Huge first movie. Second movie did very well. Third movie released just a few years later was Jurassic Park 3. It didn't do well. It almost went under the
Right.
radar. But then all of a sudden, and that was like 2001 where the last Jurassic Park was, so if you consider that a trilogy, I mean, that capped off that pretty much those characters at the time. That the first one had set up. But then it was 14 years till they released another one, and then that one just ripped. It was incredible in terms of how much money that movie made. How Jurassic World is what I'm referring to. And,
Right.
so it was just like I was shocked to know. Wait, that audience was still around because the box office receipts for the third one said it died out a long time ago. Was this audience just latent, or was there something else that revived them?
They
Like, what
couldn't
happened?
wait.
I still don't understand that. I'm like, or was it just the ads? Like, because
think
again, another
nostalgia is-
generation.
I think nostalgia is a huge part of it too. I think also the
But
internet.
nostalgia would mean that those that were, what was it, 93 where it came out, you were young enough to want to come around again 15 years later for this?
Absolutely. Like nostalgia is a huge factor in a lot of these movies. It's why they made like two Rambos too many,
Right.
or even, and that's why they did like like all these like Rocky came back after how many
But-
years? Like
right,
it's
but
a big part of it.
It would make more sense if Jurassic Park 3 was a huge hit, that it made $500 million. But still, the world went over $1 billion. So I go, where the hell is this audience? I just don't see it. Anyway, there's a bit of a step back to your point where this movie does leave you off with it's a satisfying conclusion, but it doesn't. Does it leave us? Does it actually really leave us satisfied? Like when this film ended, did you feel like? Did you end it thinking, oh, that was rushed, like you said before, or were you more like, no, that was fine, that worked for me? Like what was your big takeaways from this film?
So before I answer the ultimate question about whether I was satisfied or not, I want to go back. So you mentioned the scene where Luke goes to see Yoda. For me, that's when the movie really starts to kind of wind down. You get the sense that they're like shutting the store down. Like they're starting to like count the registers out. They're starting to, mop the floors. Like you definitely get the sense that from here on out, every scene is just going to be about resolution, and they're just going through the checklist of like
Going through the motions of this, do you feel like, all right, we don't have much time? Is that the problem with this theatrical releases? Is just that you only have 2 hours per film? Would this have been better treated if it was a TV show?
yes and no. Yes, because you'd probably get more out of it. No, because then you're making the writers lazy and that they can take their time. You often mention the idea that you like movies because they're shorter and people really have to bring their A game in order to do what they want to do in a smaller amount of time. Like you can't take advantage of 6 hours,
Right.
so.
But it
Absolutely.
all depends on the context here. I mean, as we talked about with Star Wars, just within those 2 words, you can open up you do open up a huge world, a lot to discover. Can you do that within 3 films, totaling 6 hours?
Yeah,
I do.
You definitely can. Like what's cool about Star Wars is you can go wherever you want, and that's why I think the franchise is so successful. Like I can go out tomorrow and buy a Star Wars comic, which could tell me the story of Luke Skywalker's brother, uncle's mechanic, and it would probably be compelling and interesting. Is that worthy of a movie? Like absolutely not. But you can have really great movies and tell a very condensed story. Like you put the focus on that. And then if I want to go out and learn more about the world, I can buy a book and read a novel about that, or
Right.
read a comic or play a video game. So that's what's really cool about it. The movies still need to be movies. They still need to operate.
Right. What's worthy to be told in the theatrical
Right.
experience?
Absolutely.
Right. Unfortunately, that's going away right now, but I'll leave that baggage at the door. And then everything's just going to be filler. Because it's like, I don't want to see a John Wick TV show. Only show us what's going to be, what's necessary for the big screen. Not everything has to have a long life in
Right,
terms of...
and it's fine if they do want to make a John Wick TV show, but then you can focus on something where...
The world,
like,
yeah.
Right, yeah. Like I'm very much against tying everything together where you have to watch the show to enjoy the movie, to enjoy the book. Like I think the movie should stand alone as the centerpiece.
Right.
And then if I'm a big fan, then let me go out and let me get more, but don't leave, someone like yourself would not want to read a Star Wars book. You should not feel slighted because you didn't read a book and you
Right.
don't understand the movie.
It's like scratching an itch. It's just like after the movie's over, if you want a little more, you scratch that itch, that desire to
Right.
learn more
Right.
about that world, right? So I would just file that under all that stuff, the Clone Wars, all that stuff, under scratching an itch.
No, I mean, I don't disagree with that. But because
Because it is. It's that you become a fanboy.
and
at that
it's
point,
fine
right?
if you want
So-
more Star Wars, then by all means, let's not keep that from you. But
I'm a huge. Give me a hypothetical. I'm a huge Jaws fan, right? After I see Jaws, I want more Jaws. So there'll be like comics about Chief Brody, just what he does in his day to day. Is there a shark out there today? No. Okay. What's going on in Amity? Sure. I become a fanboy at that point, and then I'll have other writers scratch that itch for me, and they can go down compelling directions. Chief Brody might be going through a divorce.
I just don't want you to position it as being too sardonic. If people like it, they like it, and I don't think you can dismiss them as being
Right.
like fanboys. But yeah, I know what you mean.
All I'm saying is that I think you transition into being a fan, an enthusiast to the point where you need to get more. You need to You want to consume more, and that's fine to do. That's why we like sequels in them, in movies. But rein it back into what's that initial vision? Is this your complete story that you wanted to tell, or are we just milking something?
Right.
And I think there is a huge difference there. And again, you and I definitely appreciate those that just go, hey, it could be three movies, 6 movies, whatever it is, as long as it's your complete vision. When you're done with that story, with that complete vision, then you're done.
Yeah, because I think there's a designation. I think what you were saying, and just to kind of reword it for my own understanding, is you can be a fan of the movie, but then you could be a broader fan of the franchise or the intellectual property.
Like you said, there are new characters that are spawned from even that world, the comic that's written about this, about that world or whatever. Like I go to the example of the Clone Wars. Now, I've never watched a single episode, but I do know, obviously they're introducing you to new characters and they're building another world that's built off of that, and it's sometimes tied into these new movies that come out or the TV shows. So I get that. I'm fine. It's not my cup of tea, but I get that people, those that are really enthusiastic about the property, that they want to. They want to dive in. They want to kind of like really, really soak it all up, soak up that world. As you talk a lot about the aesthetics, it's in terms of the environment, the setting, and everything like that. If you want more of that, well, you can get that.
Right.
I'm more about the cinematic experience, and I just want to be immersed. That's what matters to me within that condensed 2-hour-long movie, whatever it is. And I do know that there is the challenge when you got to wrap things up, as we discussed. That is tougher to execute. And we've just known that with most, even Lord of the Rings. Even as that's written, we know we all have problems with that ending of that Return of the King, with the 17 endings that everyone references. If I ask myself the question, am I satisfied with Return of the Jedi? In some ways, yes. In a lot of ways, no.
Well, how would you have been satisfied? Because, I will now answer your question. I was satisfied by it. Like, I didn't get the same experience with the movie as I did with Empire, but perhaps the movie did not have the luxury of being a little bit more stylish and a little bit more considerate, because they did have to wrap up this story, which has now been told over 2 movies and going on to a 3rd. So
I feel like
why weren't
I
you
would
satisfied?
be satisfied if there was another episode in between. I would. I feel like, again, I did feel how rushed it was, even when I was a kid. Because again, like I said, we're right off to the races. We're getting, and we talked about that within the first Star Wars. You like being thrust right into the action. That's great. But then you're resolving everything quickly. Like you're saying, we're wrapping everything up with Yoda. We got to push him aside. And then, you're counting down the clock, and that's fine. But like, I'm also going, I kind of wanted more with Han, Luke, and Leia, which we didn't get in Empire. Selfishly, I wanted that, and you still don't even get that because Luke spends more time with Yoda before he dies, and you're still separating them. So in many ways, I wasn't, and I'm saying this as a kid watching it. And yeah, there are many other things, like even with Lando, I'd want more with Lando. I love Lando, but I wanted more time with these characters.
I just wanted
even
more
if you
time.
had to challenge them.
I just wish there was more time.
Right, exactly. So if there were 6 episodes with these characters, I would be all about it. Like if they made a trilogy, this came out in 83, so if it was 86, 89, 92, boom, then I probably would have gotten my fill. But I feel like most trilogies suffer from that. The Dark Knight trilogy, same thing. We're wrapping everything up already, and that was the Dark Knight Rises was a long, almost 3-hour-long movie, and it felt like everything was wrapping up, edit quickly, wrap it up, and a lot of others too. A lot of other trilogies, like even not Indiana Jones. See, Indiana Jones. Okay, one thing with Last Crusade, that took its time. That introduced a new character. And you felt like that was one where, while it was considered a trilogy, it wrapped up in such a nice way.
Well, there was nothing to wrap up.
That is true. There wasn't much set up. You're 100% right.
Right, yeah.
There wasn't much set up. There was like, hey, even in the second one, you're like, did you really want more of this? Well, this is what you're getting. But in the third one, you introduced something new, the father-son relationship, and it just hit all the right notes. So that one was satisfying, but yeah, I feel it's just more and more difficult to get than The Godfather Part 3. I mean, to the point where Coppola's redoing that one after 30 years. It's tough to wrap all these up.
Yeah, I don't envy anyone who has to do that. I think Return.
No, let's do a hypothetical, Harry. You got to wrap up a Star Wars trilogy. You got to direct Return of the Jedi. Like, what would you do? Like, if you had those pieces, if you're like, oh, here's the script, Empire Strikes Back. This is how it ends. Take it from here, and just wrap everything up. That's an insane challenge.
It's an insane challenge, but you know what? And I'm not qualified to do a better job than what was put on screen. But I think the idea, the trick is to really thin things out, and it's tough because you need to balance the stakes.
Well, you have all these arcs. You have all these arcs to manage.
Well, that's part of it. But like, do we need a second Death Star? Like, there's got to be a way to make it. You could thin it out. You could dilute it in a way that's not redactive. Like, I really feel like you've got this battle in space, the battle on Endor, and the battle on the Death Star 2, where Luke is fighting Darth Vader and the Emperor. It's one of those things where, of course, you need to have something for all of these characters to do. You can't have Han Solo out there fighting Darth Vader alongside Luke. That won't work, and that wouldn't be satisfying either. But at the same time, there was just too much going on. So you couldn't really devote enough time to any one thing. And then you're right, as soon as Luke is back together with everybody there on Endor, then he's like, I gotta go. And he goes, and then he gets, he allows himself to get kidnapped by Vader, and he resolves his storyline. So once again, I agree. There's too much going on, and nothing is, the end of Luke's and Vader's arc is satisfying, but the other ones are kind of just...
They've given the right amount of time between that Luke and Darth Vader and the Anakin storyline. I mean, again, you didn't want to see any more with that once they're fine. You didn't want to see them riding bikes together.
I just remember... I want to know your memory of when that helmet comes off and how you felt, because that's a huge reveal.
Well, yeah, you're all like, there's this fascination we had with the masks, I think, as a kid. I was also into Halloween, and that one movie, the fifth one, they're like, he's finally unmasked. And for some reason, it's that, again, being withheld something. You're being withheld information, what the character looks like. So you're the most curious when they're about to reveal it. And in a weird way, when you're a kid, you feel like the world's going to explode if you see that.
Right.
Like, what's going to happen? Shit's going to get off the chain. Like, so with the funny thing is with Michael Myers as a kid, when I saw it, it was a huge fake out because it was completely dark except his eye. So you're like, whoa, that wasn't even a face. With this one, it was more like, okay, what else were we expecting?
You get that soft-boiled egghead and...
Why do we think egghead, by the way?
Because
I did think that.
It's shaped like an egg. It's
Not
quite
really,
white.
is
Yeah,
it,
come
though?
on, man. That's totally what it is.
Sort of. Yeah, I guess so. Why did he choose that? That's weird. That's an interesting one.
I really like the vulnerability of that face.
You do.
And like that.
Yes.
That's actually a great choice. I would actually say 9 times out of 10 when you have a reveal like that, you're left disappointing. I will say maybe it wasn't what I wanted, but I wasn't disappointed. It worked well.
I just couldn't believe that guy that we saw was the one throughout the first one marching through. It was the same guy with
Right,
that
yeah.
attitude.
He really
It didn't quite fit with everything else in the trilogy.
Yeah, he lost his edge in like 5 seconds in Return of the Jedi. And I guess that's kind of... It has to happen, but, again, there is that disconnect of the Vader that you saw in the first 2 movies to this guy, just
Right.
kind of... Whatever.
Like, I did think before the mask came off, I was familiar of James Earl Jones, as a kid. So he was in a lot of stuff that I watched. So
Was he really?
Sneakers.
Was he in a lot of stuff that you?
He was
watched
on a run. First of all, he was on a run. He was in the Jack Ryan movies. He was in Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, Sneakers.
You saw all of that. You saw all
What?
of that after Return of the Jedi.
No, it was around the same time. I was a late bloomer for Return of the Jedi.
Gotcha.
My brother told me, well, it's David Prowse who technically did. So it
Who
was a little
passed
bit of
away
like
recently, by the way.
right, exactly. So
Rip Prowse.
you weren't going to be disappointed because of how that scene was executed, and I think that was wonderfully that was done.
Right.
Yoda's death, same thing. Yoda's death was a very nice way of going out. It was a little bit drawn out. I think as a kid, I was just like, all right, moving on. We only have like an hour and a half left. But, I wanted to get in the action as a kid. You know what I mean? Even on TV, when you saw that, you're speeding through the forest on those things. What are they called again?
Speeder bikes.
Yeah. that it looked a whole lot better then, but when I look at it now, it's just, it takes me out of it. So it's tough.
It's tough. Well, yeah, I mean, that's definitely a sequence that hasn't aged. I mean, they tried their best. It's not the worst, but I agree, it's not the best either.
What do you think of the Emperor?
So I'm glad you brought that up because
What if we didn't bring it up?
Yeah, I'm not bringing it up.
We didn't even. Can I just say we didn't bring up the Death Star exploding in the first episode? So
we didn't. Well, because like everyone, of course,
everyone talks about that.
Everyone talks about that.
Well, everyone talks about the Emperor too. So let's. No, I'm kidding. Go on, talk about it. Let's just not talk. What if we talked about everything else but these characters?
I think that's largely what we talked about, like with Empire. I don't think we really talked a lot about like the big reveal. We mentioned it, but I digress. The big thing for me about the Emperor, he's cool because he's so creepy and gross and like disgusting and slimy, and I think that's fine. But
like, first of all, you built that up so much, and then you ended with, "I think that's fine."
And I think that's fine. But here's the thing, and I don't even know if you can, like, if you went out and bought Empire Strikes Back now, you would not get this because they changed it. But the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back was not creepy and gross and disgusting. It was just kind of a regular guy with kind of creepy eyes in a hood. They went back and changed that scene to make him look more like he does in Return of the Jedi. And I liked the original Emperor because I thought it was kind of cool that it was like this scary but still kind of relatively normal guy. I'm sure there are plenty of people who like the fact that he's like this weird toad-looking kind of dude, and I totally appreciate that. And look, I love the performance, and he really hams it up, and he's kind of gross and almost like pseudo-sexual and all that stuff. But, part of me wishes I could have seen Return of the Jedi with that different Empire Strikes Back Emperor.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he doesn't work as much with me. I don't really find him as being this great villain.
No, I agree. I'm not impressed with him.
Again, I'm holding off discussing the other films in these trilogies that he's in, but I don't know why I'm not as engaged. Like, again, if Darth Vader weren't in this, if he was in replace Darth Vader, it would not work. I would hate these movies. He's got that high voice. It's not that weight that you need. Darth Vader is there for that, but luckily these trilogies have another character that does provide that weight. Unless it was Hannibal Lecter. If there's a Hannibal Lecter type Emperor, then that would be great. If it was Anthony Hopkins doing it, I'd be like, he can ham it up and keep that weight, in a way that would work. Damn it, I want to see that. I want to see Anthony Hopkins as the Emperor. I don't want to see, I like Ian McDiarmid.
You sold me on that. But, Ian McDiarmid did a good job because, again, he's meant to be creepy and, like, so arrogant and disturbing. So I think that's really cool because also, at this point, what you're supposed to see in the dark side and with the Empire in Return of the Jedi is you're supposed to see that it's so gross and decayed. Like, in the first couple of movies, there's a lot to do with, like, it's more like, it's very Nazi-ish, right? With the uniforms and the marching and everything is impeccable. But what's kind of interesting is in Return of the Jedi, when you finally see, like, who's the head of all this? Who's the heart of the Empire? And it's this disgusting creature. And so, like, that is kind of cool, right? Because at this point, like, you're resolving everything, and it's like, all right, well, like, let's see what's behind, like, the curtain, and it's like, oh, geez, like, yeah, it's this disgusting guy.
Let me ask you: of the Star Wars characters people dress up for Halloween, is Emperor the least, the character that people dress up like the least?
I feel like people who dress up like him are like perverts, man.
Like, imagine the parade in New York, I don't see that happening.
I would say they'd
have to commit to like the slow gestures.
I'm gonna say that, like, if you're dressing up like the Emperor and
okay, let's give a hypothetical. Emperor at a party, he would be the one going.
I think Emperor at the party, like
a corporate party.
definitely
A corporate party.
You don't want to. You don't want to talk that.
You know, he's just in the corner. Just like he's trying to get a word in,
can't
get a word in edgewise.
He's got a weird game going on, and you don't want to be part of it.
Right. So, interesting character. Doesn't really work. I don't really totally.
I do think it works, though. I think at that point, you see the guy who has Vader in his thrall, and then that's when you start to feel sorry for Vader, and then you just see like just how cruel the Emperor is, and like how he completely disrespects Vader. Like again, like their relationship is totally messed up. Like there's no respect at all. Like
Right.
he doesn't care for Vader. He's just a tool. Like he doesn't even grudgingly respect him. Like you're under me, but I trust you. Like you can take care of stuff. Like he doesn't even think that Vader can do his job. And like maybe he can't, but still like you suddenly get the sense that there's no sense of professional respect there. And you're like, oh man, poor Vader.
Right. When did you start feeling for Vader?
I think at that moment when he saves his son, and then you realize like he doesn't want to be part of this anymore, right? Like
there are small moments that the film focuses, where you see him hesitating, you see him, yeah, I guess so. You can't really get that earlier. You can't really feel for Vader any earlier than that. But there are those moments where you just see him kind of, it's subtle, but just like, oh, well, he's investing more in the communication with Luke, even when he's fighting him.
Well, and there's also the scene before he takes him to the Emperor when Luke turns himself in. Like, I don't remember the lines exactly, but the feeling that I remember is like Darth Vader is kind of trying to contemplate a way to make this go well for Luke. Like, he doesn't want to just bring Luke to the Emperor so Luke could be killed. Like, right. He's definitely thinking of a way to make this work out as a win-win.
The other thing that doesn't really work with the scenes toward the end is, there's that nice balance with the Ewoks.
I love the Ewoks, man. I love them.
I do like them, but it does kind of when you're balancing those scenes, you got the heavy scenes of the Emperor and Darth Vader mixed with the fight out there. Like it's like I got this in one hand, I got this in the other, and we're juggling between them. And as a kid, I think I really embraced the Ewoks. Now I'm less about that. I do think they're adorable, but I think in a separate. Wasn't there an Ewoks Adventure? There were like a show where they just
there were two Ewok. There were two Ewok movies, and there was like.
Are they good? Did you ever watch those?
I maybe saw one, and I think visually they were pretty interesting. I have to say, like as a kid, I didn't like the Ewoks. As an adult, I like them more. The scene, so there's that scene where like a bunch of Ewoks are running, and they kind of get hit by like a laser blast, and they get up, and one doesn't, and he's trying to wake him up. I love that scene. It's so heartbreaking.
No, it is. Right. It shows the humanity within, like the emotion they have within. I do like that. I think that works. I just think it works more in another movie. It's in small doses. It works here, but then it kind of you get a little too much of it, so that adorableness kind of wears off to some degree, at least for me. Whereas, I think it does kind of. I know they're trying to establish this balance here, but still the weight is kind of taken off from the what's kind of happening with. Because it's cut between, isn't it? Emperor shocking the hell out of Luke.
No, that's true.
Cute Ewoks.
But you know what? For me, also, like I like it because it also shows. Like we haven't really seen too much of the atrocities that the Empire has done. Like the only time we see them kind of messing things up is against the rebellion. But like here we see like, oh yeah, like they're on like the forest moon of Endor, and like. Maybe they shouldn't be here, and they're like, killing all these like bear creatures and like all that stuff. Like it's the only time you ever see evidence that like the Empire is truly horrible, but except for when they blow up Alderaan in the first movie. But my point is that I like seeing that because presumably the impression that you get is the Empire's out on all these planets subjugating races and kind of just being awful, but you don't see examples of that. And budget and time and story, like of course you can't show that. So this was like the last possible moment you could demonstrate that.
Yeah, but we're running out of time with this movie, and
And
I think-
patience and interest.
yeah, yeah. So it's just like, and then it's over with. You're like, oh, isn't that nice? That ended. But again, I think it's fine. I think it's good. It's I do like it. Obviously, no one ever says Return of the Jedi is the best of the three.
No one says that.
No one at all.
No.
There might be some debate between Star Wars and Empire, even though you disagree with that, but no one ever says Return of the Jedi. Though, again, I think that what works well within this is already kind of like why people would prefer Return of the Jedi over some of the prequels and the ones that follow, is that it's just you're still with the characters that you love that were set up in the first two. So I think that's why so many people do have affection for this movie. Still hard to watch on Blu-ray, man. The Speed Racer scene, it doesn't work as well. It really it knocks me out of it. I can't get this on 4K. There's no way I can get these Blu-ray discs on 4K. That's it.
They
I
might
should
have
stuck with DVD.
They might have
Should've
really
stuck with
amped
DVD.
it up. You never know. You won't know.
No, they can't make this look very fluid. They can't make this look seamless. It's not. I'm not gonna get my heart broken. My heart is as strong as it was for this one. That's kind of it. Anything more we want to say about Return of the Jedi?
No, I mean, we can get more into it, but then we'd be here all night. I think, the idea was
here, everyone has their own, take. The thing is, these movies are very special. I
Right.
think as much as we might have our issues with it, it's coming from a place of, man, we just really wanted this to be for me, I would love it if this movie was really 100% engaging, like my favorite trilogy of all time. It's not, but I wanted it to be, and but I have so much affection for it, and I do totally get it. I'm thrilled for those out there that love it the most, and I do, if anything I'd recommend is that when you're watching these movies, definitely watch them during the holidays. I love what we're doing here, counting down the days till Christmas and just spending time with these characters, this world. It's great revisiting. So yeah, just kind of excited and thrilled to the fan base, thrilled that the fans are out there as I've questioned. It's exciting to know that the films like this, coming from an idea from Lucas's head, has created something so incredible.
Yeah, just
worldwide.
ignited so many imaginations and inspired so many people, both to create their own stuff, but also to kind of continue on with Star Wars. But
Right.
we're going to continue on with Star Wars, and I'm kind of, I'm how do I want to say this? I am guardedly excited because we'll be then getting chronologically in terms of release, starting to talk about the prequels. So
Yeah. So we're not getting any new Star Wars movies this year, but every day leading up to Christmas and from now on, it's a Star Wars movie every day. So join us, watch them along if you feel like it. But just it's good having a chat about the memories of these films and and what resonates. So we'll see you all next time as we dive into the prequels.
yeah, take care.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to not miss a single bounce.
We'll catch you next time, and don't forget to leave reviews on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you listen to Movie Bounce.